You want to see the World Cup final. Just the cheapest seat in the building. When tickets first go on sale, that seat runs about €700. Steep, but it's the World Cup once every 4 years, so you think about it. And by the time you actually go to buy, a few hours before kickoff, that same cheapest seat costs €6,700. Not the good seats, the worst ones in the stadium. The best seats have crossed 180,000. Even the train to the stadium, normally €11, has quietly become 127. None of that was an accident. None of it was greed simply getting out of hand. Every number you just heard was engineered, deliberately, by design. Because the tournament that was built to be the game of the entire planet, the sport you can play with a ball and two shoes for goalposts, has quietly been turned into something else. And the easy explanation is the wrong one. The easy story is that this one tournament, in this one country under this one president, got greedy. That's not what happened. What happened is bigger and older and almost impossible to stop. And the reason comes down to a single institution that is, with no exaggeration, more universal than the United Nations. Let's start with what it now costs just to watch. For the first time in a World Cup, the tickets were sold the way airlines sell seats. It's called dynamic pricing. The price floats on demand, second by second. The more people want in, the more it costs, automatically, endlessly. That's why the cheapest seat could start at €700 and multiply nearly tenfold before kickoff. And it worked exactly as intended. Ticket revenue reportedly hit around €2.3 billion, roughly 600 million more than the previous tournament. But tickets were only the entry point. Pitchside packages, hospitality, a brush with the legends, a seat where the substitutes sit, reportedly sold for $1 million each. There were paid press conferences, squares of the actual turf, sold off as souvenirs. And the champions each walked away with a ring, 18-karat gold, 89 diamonds, priced at $12,000, with thousands more minted specifically to sell to fans around the world. As one journalist who covered it put it, this was the World Cup of the ultra-rich. And that was the point. Now here's the part that should actually unsettle you. Because the most revealing thing wasn't the price of a seat. It was that money rewrote the rules of the game itself. They're called cooling breaks, pauses so players can drink water in extreme heat. Sensible enough, except they showed up in a stadium sitting at 22 degrees, where nobody needed cooling at all. So what are they really? Advertising windows. A 20-second spot that sold for €200,000 early in the tournament was going for $425,000 by the final. The match now stops mid-flow so it can be sold. And yet, this is where it gets more interesting than a simple rant. There's a real defense, and a sharp one. A veteran of the sports business world makes it bluntly. FIFA isn't a charity. It's an institution whose entire job is to grow football and the money football generates. Those ad breaks are exactly what let free-to-air channels afford the broadcast rights in the first place, which is what lets millions of people watch the whole thing for free. Kill the ad money and you don't get purer football. You get football only the wealthy can see. So even the cynical machinery has a logic to it. Hold on to that. Then politics walked onto the pitch, at the very highest level. The host nation's president reportedly picked up the phone and asked FIFA to overturn an American player's red card. Off the field, it was heavier. A referee turned away at the border. Supporters from certain countries denied entry. Enough that the UN itself called for a hard look at how immigration crackdowns were trampling people's dignity. It looks unprecedented. It isn't. Rewind to 1962. A star player was suspended for a World Cup final until political pressure quietly got him reinstated. And his country went on to win it. Interference in football is as old as football. The difference now isn't that politics entered the game. It's that everyone watched the phone call happen. It just got too big to hide. Which brings us to the real question. If the prices are outrageous, if the rules are for sale, if the politics are naked, why does none of it change anything? Boycotts were called over the tournament in Qatar, over the one in Russia, even this time, and in one country alone, 24 million people still sat down to watch the final. The outrage is loud, and the outrage is sincere, and it bounces off completely. Here's the structural truth almost nobody says out loud. FIFA has 211 member federations. The United Nations has 193 member states. Read that again. More of the world belongs to football's governing body than belongs to the UN. FIFA owns the World Cup outright, and every 4 years it effectively rents it to a country. It operates in its own silo, with near total power over its own universe, answerable to almost no one. It never claimed to be a charity. Its openly stated purpose is to push the product into new markets and generate as much revenue as possible. So op-eds don't move it. Boycotts don't move it. The only things that could ever move FIFA are the two things that touch its money: its broadcasters and its audience. Which means the uncomfortable truth is that as long as you keep watching, you are the reason nothing changes. But it isn't all powerful. It's balanced on two tripwires and it knows it. Push the money too hard and you drain the emotion. And emotion is the entire product. Sponsors aren't buying football, they're buying the feeling football creates. Strangle that with endless ad breaks and there's nothing left worth sponsoring. And push the price too hard and you cut off the popular base, because football, by its very definition, is the people's game. The tournament just grew from 32 teams to 48, with talk of 64 coming. That expansion did something genuinely beautiful. It let tiny nations reach a World Cup for the very first time, an adventure their whole countries will never forget. And it stretched the tournament towards something that could one day drag on for months. It's the same knife edge at every step. Grow the machine without killing the thing that made it worth growing. So here's where it leaves us. The outrage is real and the outrage is old, and by itself it changes nothing. Because the body selling you the game is more universal than the UN and owns the only game in town. But it isn't untouchable. It lives or dies on one fragile thing: whether the feeling survives the business. Football was the sport you could play anywhere, with anyone, with a ball and two shoes thrown down as goalposts. The thing that made it the game of the whole planet was simple: it belonged to everyone. And now the cheapest seat on its biggest night costs more than a used car, and the game itself pauses so it can be sold back to you 20 seconds at a time. The question was never whether they'll keep pushing. Pushing is their job. The real question is the one only you can answer. Every 4 years, with the remote in your hand, how much are you still willing to pay for the game that used to be free?